thank you guys. I've seen some of you guys here that come for all three of these, so that's exciting. This could go on forever, so I hope you guys join us.
Yes, we hope so.
It's actually getting a lot of fun for Sean and Firestone Walker and ourselves to keep trying to top ourselves. So this one is, you know, if you're a Monty Python fan and you're loving the music, this is now for something completely different. So we put poison in one of the dishes. We're not quite sure what.
It was a salmon mousse.
Well, it is a salmon mousse. So I want to introduce David Walker here.
That was a fantastic introduction. I mean that from the heart of my bottom. Alright, so it's an English evening tonight. It's not in honour of me, I don't know why, but there'll be a lot of English humour as best we can.
Just turn that down a little bit.
Alright, so Monsieur Paxton, we're in for a treat tonight. Monsieur Paxton has been working hard on this, so no further ado. Something completely different. A man with 3 buttocks.
Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's a big thank you first to Bird, Matt Vandenberg. Guys who, you know, not only does he do this, he does the Burgundian, he also does bottle works, but without him we would not have this space and we wouldn't be able to be here, so thank you so much, Vern. It's, again, it's a real honor to be here with a lot of you who have been here, I think all 3, like Matt was saying, which is really super cool. This menu, I wanted to do something completely different, so we did. I'm a huge Monty Python fan, for those of you who know me a little bit better. 12, I was homesick one day and I was flipping around the TV and there was the Black Knight, King Arthur, and it's merely a flesh wound. And this whole thing goes and I'm sitting there at 12 like, what is this? And I just kept watching and I was crying, I was laughing so hard, homesick. And I'm like, Monty Python, I gotta look this stuff up, and ever since then I think it kind of changed me a little bit. So this is kind of my homage to the whole gang at Monty Python, and I wanted to play up the English theme since Firestone Walker. You know, their beers are so interesting with that English undertone, and obviously, you know, those of you who did follow the World Beer Cup a week and a half ago, they won 4 times the New Second Brewer of the Year. So I really think it's a perfect fit. Kind of how this evening is going to go tonight is we're in no rush. There is no TV on tonight. There's no show that's more important than why you're here. So slow down and enjoy. We have a lot of fun food, my interpretation of a lot of things. I'll talk about each course and kind of let you know what's happening outside of the menu you guys have in front of you. If you want, your servers can take those menus and put them off to the side. You can take them later so they don't get dirty. If you want to keep those. So without further ado, our first course, it is now for, you know, something completely different because my crumpets just did not turn out the way I wanted them to. So we're doing an English water cracker instead. So it still has that English little twist, but they just weren't quite right, and we couldn't figure out why. And, I don't know, it's sea out of water. But with that, we have Spam, which, you know, Monty Python and the Spam skit kind of got me thinking, and then just charcuterie in general. So it's actually kind of fun. Mr. Walker doned some nice gloves after we had 2 pig's heads simmering in DBA and mirepoix and shallots and garlic and thyme and bay leaf and a whole bunch of other fun stuff simmering away. Flaked it out and then ran it through the grinder twice. So we have this really kind of fun interpretation of Spam, since there is no recipe out there for Spam, at least not that I could find. And Spam usually has a whole bunch of nitrates that make it real pink, like ham. I didn't use that, so it's a little bit more gray, but the flavor is beyond there. And then I did a cold, infusion of DBA with an English tea and mixed it into the DBA mustard for a sauce. And and then we have a nice little mixed greens over the top of that. So just a nice little light course to start us off. And David, why don't you talk about our first beer?
Absolutely. Great. Right, actually, you know, spam. I don't know what you guys know what.
Not that much spam.
All right, spam. So, you know, if you grew up in England, you grew up on spam, and well, I mean, you had a little bit of spam. Spam is, for those who don't know, spam has sort of a dubious sort of heritage. Some people call it special processed American meat. At least that's what we called it in Britain because it was made in America. And actually, I think it comes from the melding of two words, spiced ham, and it was called spam. So, and of course, these guys thought spam was really funny. Hey, does anybody know why we call spam on the internet? I'm just sort of curious, but
Because of Monty Python.
I don't like spam.
all right, there you go. Amen. Thank you. That helped me out greatly. It's bothering me all week. I know where spam the meat came from. All right, so let's talk about the beer. So this is our Pale 31. We won a gold medal at the World Beer Cup this year, again with this beer. And you know, the question I have for our brew team, and especially Matt Brynildson, is why does this beer keep winning medals? I mean, we have other beers that we make. Our DBA, the English Pale Ale that we drink here, it's my favorite beer. It just doesn't win as many medals as this beer. I sort of pushed Matt hard. I said, you know, so why does this beer do so well? And does this worry you at all, this sort of music in the background? I feel like I'm marching around. And you know, it's really interesting actually. I really pushed him hard, and he said, I'll tell you interesting stories. I don't know if you know Matt Brynildson, but Matt Brynildson started homebrewing when he was about 6. And Matt Brynildson actually had a fully functional brewery about the age of 15 in Kalamazoo. And his partner was a guy called Finn DeMink, who owned Southern Tier. These guys were at high school together, and they had a completely illegal brewery that was funded by their high school. And while all the other home brewers in Kalamazoo were brewing big, stinky ales and stouts and a bunch of other beers, these guys got completely into the art form of brewing pale ales. In fact, at one point he told me they brewed 24 pale ales in a row just to really try and dial in the American pale ale. And it all made sense to me because actually if you look at Matt's beers, they all derive from this sort of brilliance that comes out of California pale ale. And actually tonight we get to try them all, and they're sort of each one's a derivation of the next one, and I'll talk about them as the evening rolls on. So this beer really doesn't make any, it just doesn't surprise me that he was able to really pull hard and make a great California pale ale. What's great about this beer is that, first of all, it has this sort of like Pilsner-like body and colour, which is sort of unusual for a pale ale. Because this essentially is a new world pale ale coming from an Englishman. But the brilliant thing about this beer is that, and we got Sour Jim here. Jim, you want to stand for a second? Jim's going to help me out tonight, but Jim actually runs the whole QC program at the brewery and looks after our sour program. One of the brilliant things about this beer is we're really anal about having super viable yeast. And this yeast really makes the hops pop in this beer. And the malt isn't able to drag it down, which is I think one of the reasons why this beer really has won medal after medal after medal. So I'll wind up here quickly, but it's beautifully dry hopped with Centennial, and I think it's as clear a California Pale Ale as you'll taste. It's not our most professional, most popular beer, but it's certainly this thing has won more medals than any beer that we've made. So enjoy it. Pale 31.
Do you guys enjoy the Spam? This thing's loud. It's good.
It's good.
Because for those of you who might have seen The Meaning of Life, I thought I would just end the meal right now with the salmon mousse. So, for those of you who did see the movie, basically everybody dies from the salmon mousse. Therefore, this has been a great evening. Thank you for coming. Sorry, I'm only here until tomorrow.
But I didn't have the salmon mousse.
Good one. So, again, just with our fun little twist and interpretations of everything, I wanted to play up the salmon mousse and kind of do my own interpretation, but yet overlay this beer cuisine idea. So, with the beer, we wanted to do the Solace, which I'll have Mr. Walker talk about in just a minute, but the Solace, to me, it's a great medium to cook with because it has so many great flavors. And we basically poached the salmon, which is local salmon here, and we poached it, pulled some of it together with chamomile and flavored cream, as well as we put in some chives and some other little herbage just to lighten it up, make it fresh, a little lemon juice. And then we put that with a cucumber, red onion, and dill salad on the side that has a red nectar, which is about 15, 16 years ago. It was Anchor Steam, Sierra Nevada, and Red Nectar and Red Tail Ale were the beers in my local place. And it's kind of funny thinking back that far, where I used to drink Red Nectar all the time, and now I get to cook with it. I know the people who make it. So this is where, to me, it's kind of neat just to see the craft beer movement and where we've been going, and flavors and ideas and the constructs that we have today and what I'm able to do with it. So without people like Firestone, you know, it makes my life a lot easier because these guys lay in the flavors, and they even let me play with it a little bit. So to go with the salmon mousse and this nice little cucumber salad, I wanted to play up the Solace in a slightly different way. And for those of you who know the Holy Grail, the elderberry comments, and so I did elderflower syrup that's actually been squeezed into the glasses before the Solace is poured onto it, and it's really going to bring out that chamomile that's in the salmon mousse, as well as it just kind of lightens it up and changes the beer a little bit. So this is my interpretation of their beer, and a little twist, almost like a beer cocktail. So with that, I'm going to have David talk about Solace. Unless you want the mic. You'll do the mic.
All right. Sean's buggering with my beer again. All right. It's not good. Sean is an arrogant man. We spend so much time squeezing these beers beautifully out of our brewery, and then Sean puts elderflower syrup in them. So the beer you're drinking now is actually not the beer that we made, although it's all right. The beer that was made was a little bit drier than this, and is a what we call a sort of a Belgo-Bavarian sort of unfiltered wheat beer. It was our answer to coming up with something for the summer. It's a sort of a Belgian farmhouse ale, and it's about 25% Hefeweizen, and there's a little French hop in it. We backed it off this year. It's about just under, I think it's about 4.8% alcohol by volume, and it's our summer beer. So try and remove that syrup flavor and back yourself up. Either way, it's a beautiful thing. So this is our Solace.
Again, now for something completely different. Instead of fish and chips, I wanted to do the other fish, otherwise known as frog legs. Matt Bonney, who is not only a good gentleman and obviously a guy who knows his beer, for those of you who happen to frequent this place, but he's also a good friend, and it's also fun to get to know your friends, and he always likes different things, and so I try to throw different things on every menu, and this year is nothing different. So frog's legs a la Bonnie. I couldn't think of a better way to incorporate the whole Monty Python theme. So we basically took chives, Italian parsley, and tarragon, mixed that with Pale 31 that you had to start with. And this is where I like to showcase different beers, or the same beer different ways, so you get a little bit more understanding of what the flavors are and what they're doing to the food. And we basically marinated the frog's legs for about 24 hours in this brine, if you will. We did a beer batter with the Pale 31, and then we took French fries, and we actually did the red nectar and let that sit overnight so that it actually really soaked all that flavor into the fries. Fried those up, and then we did a sauce grabiche, which is kind of a French sauce, so it's across the pond, if you will. And it's kind of like a tartar sauce, but not any mayonnaise in it, so it's a little different flavor. And then to go with this, I wanted to play around with malt vinegar that usually is served with your chips and your fish, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to do it different, so I actually infused it with Centennial hops, which are in Pale 31. And actually now you have a hopped vinegar, which I think you guys will really enjoy. So your servers will serve that for you. That way nothing got too soggy for you. And with that, we have Nectar IPA.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your Solace cocktail. I actually thought that cocktails were tall stories about the male member, but Sean, you're welcome to your interpretation. We're talking about beer tonight. All right, so this is our Nectar IPA. You know, I talked earlier about Matt, the Pale 31, and how important that is to his brewing heritage, actually at our brewery. And you know, what's really interesting, the beers that you're going to drink tonight that fall into our sort of pale ale category, the Pale 31, the Double Jack, and the Union Jack, they're all Russian dolls. I mean, essentially they're the same DNA, they're the same tribe, they're the same family, and actually you can take them and put them inside each other. They're just sort of different. But if you would actually take those three Russian dolls and pull them apart, there'd actually be one missing. And that one is this here, right now, Nectar IPA. It is a, it falls under a different brand, our Nectar Ales brand. But Nectar IPA is essentially a sort of circa 1985 IPA, and it recently won a gold medal at the Australasian, the World Beer Cup as an Australasian Pale Ale. There you go. I have no idea how we put these in these categories. I mean, you need to be smoking something really to be working on that. But yeah, so this beer here really is the next step up from our Pale 31. It's got the same base hops, but then we have the dry hop on this is, once again, it's the Centennial, but it's a Chinook. But in all other ways, the malts and everything else, it's exactly the same. And so you're sort of stepping through this sort of Matt's progression. I think Matt's progression as a brewer, if you consider he was making Pale 31 at 15 in Kalamazoo, this beer is the next one along the line, and he'll tell you actually that this beer was very close to one of the early IPAs he brewed at Goose Island. So we slowly moved through his progression as a brewer, and it's really actually pretty interesting. So this is our Nectar IPA. Enjoy. Right.
Was that a hopping good time with those legs? Kind of a little different twist, you know, and here they say British food's kind of boring, you know, right? So with our next course, I wanted to do the traditional, but yet my own little twist to it. There's the steaky kidney pie, and then there's the Cornish pasty, and I kind of put the two together. But instead of steak, we use venison, and instead of just kidneys, we actually use rabbit kidneys. The rabbit kidneys were first soaked in water to kind of cleanse them a little bit, as well as we followed it with a buttermilk made with malt vinegar, and then some chives to give it a little extra twist and touch of flavor there. And then actually Alan Sprints from Hair of the Dog stopped by today. Here's Hair for Alan. So a little guidance, but not that he needed any, but he helped make the filling for these. And we put a little bit of rutabaga instead of potatoes just to give it a little bit of extra, little flavor there, and just twist it up a little bit. A little thyme, a little bay leaf, and actually a little bit of mustard. This was done with the porter, the Walker's Reserve, and nice and braised in there, and basically baked off a little bit of mixed greens on the side. The beer on this, David will talk about, but I really think it'll bring out that earthiness, especially with the venison and then the kidneys and that wonderful rich filling. We made them just a couple bites because I don't know about you guys, but I could eat these things all the time. But there's no good pasty place around. So with that, I'm going to have David here talk a little bit about the wonderful beer that's going with the pasties, the Hambale.
All right, well done. All right, first of all, this guy actually said the word pasty correctly. People over here say pasty. Pasty. I actually come from a little county called Cornwall. That's where I grew up, and so I know a lot about Cornish pasties. And
Yeah, how were they?
I haven't tried them. So yeah. The fish and chips, the chish and fips, by the way, were really good. I mean, it's sort of interesting. The fish and chips, give you a little history on fish and chips as an Englishman. You know, fish and chips were developed when the Industrial Revolution hit Britain, and they started running trains out of the major cities towards the coast. And as people sort of left the cities and hit the beaches, they literally, fish and chips were developed. It was sort of a fascinating fast food that developed in the middle 1800s. And then the chips were, they used to serve them with potatoes. And I think Dickens talked about chipped potatoes. And that's where the word chips came from. So it's sort of fish and chips. And it's even better, actually, that we were eating frog's legs, because as you know, the British and the French have had a sort of energetic relationship for a couple of 100 years. And we call them frogs, they call us roast beef. And so eating frog's legs in the traditional English dish was a great moment. Not that I normally do that. All right, so Cornish pasties. So I'm supposed to be talking about beer, but I'm going to keep talking about the food. So Cornish pasties are really cool because I don't know if you know that these were developed for tin miners in Cornwall, and basically they were these things were, I think these will be probably a little smaller, but they're like little pastry thingamajigs. And what happened is before a tin miner used to go down the mines, his wife or his better half would actually put his food in pastry, and on one half of the pasty they put sort of meat and potatoes, and the other half of the pasty they put sort of strawberries and cream, and they put this huge crust over the top of it so you could carry it. And so the Cornish pasty was like sort of an all-in-one lunchbox that you ate. I mean, I'm serious. It's absolutely serious. So if you're ever in Cornwall and you eat a pasty, it's actually huge. It's a huge endeavor. Anyway, so we got a Cornish pasty tonight. Well done. All right, so I'll get on with the beer. Enough of that. All right, so this is our hemp ale. This is a brown ale. This is actually, one of the original hemp beers made in this country, and this was sort of part of our sort of diversion off with the nectar ales part of our life. But the great thing about this beer is we make it with about 100 pounds of hemp seeds. I think I've talked about this before, but it's fascinating. Getting these hemp seeds into this country is really difficult. We bring it in from Canada. It can't get to. It goes through a Canadian lab. The Canadians sort of have to check that there's no THC in it. They then ship it across the border. The Americans don't believe the Canadians, so the Americans have to check there's no THC in it. And eventually it sort of shows up on our dock, at which point we throw it into this brown ale. quickly. And throw it to this brown exactly quickly. You know, it gives us sort of it gives a nice sort of nutty. There's some amino acids in this, and it's just sort of a nice. It's just sort of a nice addition. So this is our hemp ale. It's a brown ale.
Are you guys ready for another course? Third way through. Yeah! That's the kind of excitement I want.
Albatross!
Albatross. It's actually funny, I almost put that on the menu, but I don't know what it tastes like except bloody albatross. So our next course is kind of a riff off Bangers and Mash, but I wanted to do something a little unique with it in that I love rabbits. We're able to get pretty amazing rabbits, and we mix that in with some pork. And we actually, because of Walker and Brindleston, they're kind of cool this way, is that they give me barrels. So I took a Union barrel apart and shaved it into shavings, brought that up here, and we actually smoked the rabbit and the pork before we made the sausage in the cold smoking method to flavor the sausage, which you guys are going to go nuts over because it is just, oh. Perfect amount. So you're nuts. We put a little bit of bergamot, which is also used in tea, but it's also basically in the orange family, but it's kind of a little bit more perfumey. Wanted to play that up with some leeks and some shallots and a little bit of thyme. This just by itself is amazing, but then just to play up the whole carrot and the rabbit idea, we did a roasted carrot, turnip, and potato kind of mash. And with this mash, we have this wonderful English roasted onion gravy with DBA. And how well this all goes together, you know, the bangers and mash and gravy. Does it get any better, David? So I'm really excited too with the pairing on this because, again, you know, Firestone is really fun this way in that their beers are so food friendly. They don't compete. They're just really just wonderful flavors. They're not too astringent. They're not too over-the-top bitter. And I mean, I see why over and over you guys win all the awards you guys do because this with the Union Jack on cask, I think is going to be a really just nice pairing because you get that little bit of orange, that lower carbonation. Really, to me, makes the beer pop. So, Dave, you want to talk about beer?
All right. So I think it was actually really cool that we chose to have Union Jack in the cask at an English dinner. You know, carbonation, I was just talking to Jim, carbonation robs us of the moment. I mean, the very fact, you know, this beer really rounds out beautifully on the palate. You can really taste the hop on this beer. And it's just yummy. The sad thing for Englishmen is they don't drink beer like this. They haven't invented this beer in England. I'm not joking. I sort of joke with everybody, in the 70s, if you took blue jeans to Moscow, you'd get laid. Well, if you take an American IP to London, you'll get laid. Because they just have no idea how, I mean, they love these beers, but the British brewers are incapable of making these beers. We went on a pub crawl through some breweries in Britain earlier this year, and we opened up a bottle of Double Jack with this very cool guy from Hook Norton, and he sort of looked at the beer and he sort of looked at us, and there was this sort of blank stare, and he just sort of said, you know, America's 10 years ahead of us in what you're doing with beers, and it really is fantastic. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, it would have been a bit of a giggle, that statement, but these sort of beers I mean, this is what makes the American brewing community so sort of influential at the moment as far as brewing is concerned. Just cycle back to my discussion about Matt and his beers. So, Pale 31, he went straight from Pale 31 to Union Jack. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, that's a huge leap to make. To go to a 72 IBU, 7.5% alcohol by volume, big American IPA. But when you understand the beer that the beer you had 2 beers ago, Nectar IPA, you understand that was the beer that you leapt off to get to this beer. And this is a really yummy beer. I think it's a really influential beer for our brewery. I think it really changed our path. Here's to American IPAs that conquering the world.